Hey everybody, this is Marc Centanni, the guitar player from Harpazo, and you're watching Rocked.
Marc Centanni, welcome to Rocked. Thank you for being here.
What's going on, Jake?
This is awesome. I'm so excited to talk about your project, Harpazo, the Crucible, this really lush, really developed concept album full of um, this great story. And I remember you messaged me about it. You wanted me to check this album out.
Oh
And
yeah.
immediately I got so kind of invested in those characters. But um, before the concept, before Harpazo came to be, tell me a little bit about your musical background when you were growing up and what
Yeah.
kind of artists really influenced your playing style.
Oh yeah. That's I will tell you, my father is probably numero uno when it came to getting me into music. But actually, the first person I ever saw play guitar was my father. He was never part of any band, but he had a guitar, and I was like maybe 4 or 5 years old, and he would just be strumming and rocking the music, and and he would just always have music on. So when I was home from as a young kid and my dad was a stay-at-home dad, I would spend a lot of time with him all day long with my sister. And I used to like sneak into his closet and like play with the guitar and like I don't know what I'm doing, so I would like untune the guitar sometimes, and my dad would like, "What did you do to my guitar?" And I'm like, "I'm so sorry." I just was so excited by the guitar and just watching him play. And on the walls, we had legends like George Lynch, which from Dokken, which was my hero as a kid. I used to watch all the Dokken music videos and watch him shred like unbelievably. So Dokken was one of the first influences probably that I can recall in terms of guitar playing. And then there's also, Rex Carroll of White Cross. He's so good. But we got so many other legends like Malmsteen and Steve Vai. My dad was a huge Steve Vai fan. And he'd always would be showing me, Stevie Ray Vaughan, all these different guitar players. And he like, check this out. He was, again, my father lived and breathed music. He was kind of part of the music industry where he worked a club in New York. So we always had a steady stream of new music coming in. And after a while, he started getting into a different kind of work. And he always had these CDs, in his basement of like all these bands. And he'd occasionally like he'd make mixed cassettes. And I heard Queensryche for the first time. And I heard Michael Wilton and Chris DeGarmo with that dual harmony guitar work on Mindcrime and Rage for Order. I'm like,
Right?
whoa, what is this?
Classic.
That was an epic Those were epic albums. I was like, wow, I've never heard anything like this before. And there's another band called Sacred Warrior. They have a great guitar player as well. So it was kind of a mix of all these elements kind of growing up, and I was kind of very stuck in the, I guess you could say stuck in the 80s and early 90s, because when I would go to school, I'd have my book of CDs and they'd be like Dokken and Queensryche and Dream Theater and Fates Warning and all these bands I would get into. And like, I was like huge John Petrucci fan, like in like 2000. I was a freshman in high school and nobody even knew who Dream Theater even was. So I was like the guy with like, you gotta check them out. They're so great. Like this is the
Yeah.
best band ever, like. And so those are all my influences as a kid. Those guitar players for sure. I mean,
I know you also have a, a background with Christian music too. You mentioned Sacred Warrior, and
yes.
like how far did it extend? I mean, I know there's Striper, there's Guardian,
Okay,
there's Holy
yes, yes,
Soldier,
yes,
and
yes,
did it
yes.
extend as far back? Did you ever get into um like Larry Norman or Petra or
Yeah, my
artists
dad,
like that too?
yes, absolutely. Who could not? Petra was like the biggest Christian rock
Larry
band.
Norman, he was the original rebel.
Absolutely. It's so good. But I would say like definitely Holy Soldier. I was just listening to their debut album the other day. Like I still will throw on Holy Soldier and Old Sacred Warrior and Blood Good and
Yeah, Blood Good too. I was
Viper. Oh
really
my gosh.
surprised.
Blood Good is so good. And even Lamb of God, like people don't even know they still play. And obviously now with Michael being gone and just, absolute just devastating to the community. And let's
Yeah,
continue on with He's Coming, which was a great album as well. So it's funny, like I wasn't like for a while, I wasn't even like picking up new albums. I was always listening to the old stuff that my dad had. And I started buying my own CDs and I kind of got into more of the modern, like Pain of Salvation, Theocracy, Camelot. I'm wearing a Camelot shirt in case you didn't notice.
yeah,
So a lot of like power metal, progressive metal bands, Threshold. There's so many good ones, and a lot of them they do concept albums. So when I love Mindcrime, and I heard Scenes from a Memory, and I heard A Pleasant Shade of Grey from Fate's Warning, and I heard Tyranny from Shadow Gallery, those four CDs were the first few concept albums I got into, and then it just became a what's it called? I just had to get them all. Like I just had to hear them all. I want to hear these musicians and all of that. And Avantasia was another really big one, and Arion, So I'm like,
yeah,
man, I want to make my own rock opera. This is so cool. So yeah, that's how
yeah.
it started.
That's really cool. And sorry about that. As far
No
as
problem.
meeting Gary Werkamp,
Yeah.
he was part of this legendary band on the East Coast called uh, Shadow Gallery,
Yeah.
and so I know you're obviously a fan. Did you build up connections with a lot of musicians in the past, and then you ended up through those connections you eventually ended up meeting Gary, or was it like complete like divine intervention,
Divine
complete by
Interdict.
chance?
Yes, Gary and me, that's how this whole thing. I didn't know any musicians growing up. Gary,
Whoa.
so like other than like local ones, like friends, but not like anyone on a big stage. So what happened is here's the story. It's so weird and bizarre, but like it's cool. Back in the day, I don't know if you remember MySpace, right?
Yeah, MySpace.
MySpace.
Oh, all the rage, all the
MySpace.
emos and
Oh
like
my gosh. With the music you
kids.
could play on your profile when you show up and you could have your favorite song playing. I kind of missed that actually. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah, I
Um,
love that.
I missed that kind of stuff. It was good for us music guys and things like that and girls. So what happened was I was listening to Avantasia's album, the second one, the Metal Opera Part Two, I think it's called. And I was listening to it, and I was starting to get into my faith of Christianity, and I always wanted a guitar teacher, and I've been self-taught since I was about 13, just playing along with music and learning like anything I could on tablature and all those different apps. And I really wanted a guitar teacher. And I was just like, one night I was just hearing Avantasia and I'm like, man, a story hit me like over the head, like this story idea. Not fully developed, but just parts of it, just enough of it to go, wait a minute, I got an idea. And I think it was Seven Angels is the name of the Avantasia song. If you've never heard of it, what an incredible song. Has had like Rob Rock on it, and you have Toby, and you have all the other singers, so many great ones. And I was just like looking for a guitar teacher. And the next day, and Gary claims this is not true, I got a friend request from Gary. I'm like, what? Gary Weirkamp from Shadow Guard? Now he tells me he doesn't request anybody. I don't know what happened. I don't know the truth, but that's what I think
Yeah,
happened.
and
So
you think it's like maybe a fake profile, like, oh
yeah.
no.
I'm like, what is this? Why would he add me? Like, and I don't know if I was
This
part of the Shadow Gunner group back in the day. It's kind of hard to remember. I might have been, but I clicked on his profile and he had like this whole thing about he's a teacher. And guess what? He only lives an hour away from my apartment. I mean, my gosh, you've got to be kidding me. And he's a guitar teacher, and it's like one of my
oh
favorite bands. So I was like, Tyranny was like the album at the time that, for a few years of my life that I would
for
always listen
sure.
to, and Route 5 and, Carver. But Tyranny was the first one I ever heard because of the metal opera thing. So I contacted him, came in the studio. Um, he asked me to play something for him, and he connected. He was really such a nice guy, and he asked me to play something for him. And one of the first things I tried to play, which is like I don't even know why I would try to play this song, but I posted about it the other day. "Goodnight Kiss" by Dream Theater. I knew the solo, or at least somewhat, so I tried to recreate the solo in the studio, which I just was so proud of that song and everything I had learned on it. So I played parts of that song and the next song that comes after that one. And yeah, he was like, you know what? He goes, "You're better than I thought you were going to be." I'm like, "Thanks." That's like the greatest compliment ever coming from your hero. And it's been a couple years learning from him. And then what ended up happening was I mentioned to him eventually, like kind of like let the cat out of the bag, like, "Hey, it's just, the reason why I'm trying to learn how to play guitar was because I kind of want to write my own rock opera." And he's like, "Okay, what do you want to do?" And he had just got done with another band called Amaranth's Plight, where he worked with a writer named John Crawford, and they got DC Cooper involved and a couple other same music, some of the same musicians, and they just did their own rock opera, and I had never heard it before, so I was like, "Okay, let me check that album out." And I came back to him and I'm like, "Well, I really want to do this." And he goes, "Well, instead of doing just guitar lessons, why don't we write a couple songs for fun and we'll just see where it goes." And so that's what happened. Our first song we ever wrote was "Small Price to Pay," which is like the ninth song on the album, and "Change of Heart Part Two," which was originally "Change of Heart." We wrote part two first, if you can believe it. So funny
Whoa.
how this worked out. Because I knew how I wanted the album to end. I didn't know how the album started exactly. I had an idea, but I was still developing it. So we started right from there, and it was just kind of like a fun thing. And then we wrote like, "I Am God," and then we're like, "Wait a second here. This is actually a pretty cool song." Like we couldn't stop listening to it. I'm like, maybe this is more than just for fun. And
Yeah.
Gary's like, we should, pitch this to record labels. We should do this. And I'm like, "Okay." And I started booking studio time and we started putting the album together, and that's how it all evolved from there. And then later on, after me and Gary put together everything, that's we had Marc Zonder who kind of would sprinkle in some drums. He was probably the first guest on the album because he's really good friends with Gary. They put out an album not too long ago called ZW, I think it was called. Um, Different vibe, but prog. And he was good friends with Mark, so Mark would like call up and I'd talk to Mark for a minute, and I'm like, "Oh my God, Pleasant Shade of Gray, like all the Fates Morning CDs, so cool. Like, I love you, man." He's like, and he told Gary he'd play a couple pieces on the album just to get us started because we were using a drum track. And it was just Mark would just throw down a drum track for us and we'd put it down to our music, and it was pretty cool. So he was the first guest. So some of those guests were from Gary, DC Cooper, Marc Zonder, Lee Lemperly, Jen Eckhart. They're all people that Gary knew in the studio. They might have been teachers, they may have been producing an album. The other musicians like Les and Ray and all those, Michael Drive and Christian, those are guys that I reached out to when the album was done and asked them to guest on it. So I send them basically the done track. I'm like, "Here's the done track, pre-mix, obviously before mix or whatever, and master." I'm like, "Here, tell me what you think. Would you want to sing this part?" And I had people in my mind for many years. Les Carlson, Ray, some of those singers, I had them in my head for so long, and they actually said yes. And they were so amazing about it. And they'd call me. And first time I ever talking, like Les Carlson, like left a voicemail on my phone. I'm like, "Les Carlson called me?" And I'm like, and we get on the phone and we're praying about the album, and he was so excited about it. He's like, "What's my role, Mark? What am I going to do?" And for those guys, it wasn't about money. It was really about they wanted to promote this
Getting
project. They
involved,
believed
right?
in it. They believed in it, and they were so honored that Gary and I had reached out to them, and I had thought of them. And so yeah, sometimes they don't meet your heroes, but the heroes I have on my album, such great people. Couldn't be more proud of those guys.
And it's amazing. So putting that all together, Gary not only believed in your abilities as a guitarist by teaching you guitar, he saw like this guy's good. This guy's like onto something. And not
Yeah.
only that, but once you were able to discuss the plans of what you had in mind for this album, he was willing to take you on.
Yeah.
Like, especially as you were learning, like usually, when you make that distinction, it's like it's a gamble because you don't know if the person with the experience and kind of expertise and connection
Mhm.
that he has, you don't know if he's just gonna dismiss you and say like,
He could have.
nah, I know you have a lot of ideas, kid, but you
Yeah.
ain't ready.
I was just a kid. That's really what it was. And Gary, he does play lead guitars on the album. I'm additional guitars.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, you can hear his signature style on the album from a lot of different parts. Again, I do play guitar on the album, but most of it was a collaboration. Most of it was him, and he did a lot like the arrangements for the orchestras. While I was there with him every step of the way. We created all the music together. His job was to turn the album into what it is, to do the music. He was my producer. He helped me along that path. And again, I'm so proud of the end product of it. He is an incredible musician. And again, the album would not be the way it is today without his help. Because you know what? If it was just me, I didn't have the equipment, I didn't have the studio, I didn't have,
The
all the stuff.
resources, the
He had
connections,
he had
everything.
all the resources, he had connections, and he took me on and he believed in me. And you know what? And he didn't dismiss me. He didn't tell me, oh, you're gonna write a song about, the word Jesus in the song. I don't want to do that.
Okay.
He didn't
Yeah,
do that.
everyone turns their noses, but like that's so good that he
Yeah,
showed that faith in you, not only as a musician, but as, you know, a creator of solid ideas. And like I really love in the Harpazo project how the characters came to be now. Like Jude Lawson is like he's like the main guy. He's like this eccentric tech genius, and he really has this plight of like um not only like developing this serum to like cure humanity, but he also wants to eradicate those in opposition to his
yeah,
plight. And like, and I love how like the guy that he recruits to spread the word, Michael,
yeah,
is a trained assassin, so he's not born into it. He's trained and he's groomed by Jude Lawson to like kind of do his dirty work. And
yes.
like I just love the as Jude Lawson gets greedier, like Michael has this like
It's also
self-discovery
hesitation.
journey, this moment of like reckoning, this like reflection, growth. It's amazing.
One of the key things that, well, every time he would go do something, Michael, when he would go the messenger, whenever he'd go kill somebody or have to assassinate somebody, he
He would
thought he was
think
doing.
like multiple times about it. He would have this like conflict about it.
He had a little conflict. You could tell there was something going on, but the biggest conflict he has is when in the Two Witnesses song, when he takes out Moses and Ellie,
Yeah,
and the two witnesses from the Bible, and when he kills them, on the third day in the Bible, it says the two witnesses
yeah,
rise up in heaven, right?
right.
When he witnesses that, he goes, whoa, like what just happened? And he ended up going to this shelter and he meets the Carlson character and he tells him the truth of what happened. And it's just like, what is going on here? And he joins this movement. And I kind of almost wish I could go back a little bit and expand that, how he converts a little bit more.
Mhm.
But I only have so much room in one CD, so I had to make do.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe someday this will be a musical and I can expand the songs the way I truly wanted. Like there's some parts of it like, I could done a little bit more
yeah.
there. Yeah,
And
but
and like I love also the character who goes through a similar similar background is Princess Relena Umberto, and she's
Yeah.
from former nobility, and she wants to restore that royalty to her family name. And like, rather than go like straight to the source and seduce the big dog, she seduces his messenger. But
Yeah.
then they do the dance and they actually fall in love. And then
Yes,
they
yeah.
get
Well, sort of,
confused
yeah.
because they're like, where are my motives now? Like,
I
I
do feel like
actually really love this person. I care about this person.
he does. He does. I don't know about her so much.
Yeah, yeah.
That
I think
I
her
think
it
she's
takes a little
wrong.
bit more time
For
before
her, I
she,
think it takes more time or until she sees what happens to him when he goes
yeah,
again, until she realizes, like, wait a second, we just literally, not to spoil if you haven't heard the album, so a spoiler, like, basically they kill Michael,
yeah,
at one point in the album.
right,
And she witnesses this and he dies for his faith. And she goes, wait a second, I've seen so much bloodshed. Now the closest person to me is now dead. And for this, and I didn't expect this to happen. I didn't mean for
right,
this to happen. And I think that whole thing starts to, why did he do that? Like, we had it made. We are on top of the world. Why would he go? Why would he go against Jude now? Like, Jude couldn't be stopped. His army could not be stopped. He was already in control of everything. Why would he be on the side of the people who are dying, who are dead now? So I think that was like a huge wake up call for her, and I think that's what happened to Change of Heart Part Two. Like, she starts to realize that was there's something else going on here, why he would change.
yeah.
So
And I think the other part of the transformation in her character has to do with seeing um the child, whose parent had died, and she kind of embraces the child, and like that
yeah,
also kind of demonstrates the kind of the newfound warmth that
yeah,
she has. And but like by the end they it's like she just barely makes it out. Like it's just
barely.
like trudging, it's like slogging, and then like meanwhile like Jude, like it's like his ego is just massive. It's through the roof. And like, did you intend for Jude to just be this outright, like, no redemption at all, just
Yeah,
completely like
yes, I did.
psychotic, like
Well,
no
I
redeeming
had
quality
to.
whatsoever?
Yeah, no, he was never going to have redemption at all. There was no. This story again is based on Revelation and the coming of the Antichrist, and he's supposed to embody the son of Lucifer, basically Lucifer himself. Lucifer had one goal, and I think the reason, like, this is my interpretation of the album, because you know what, sometimes I write things and other people
Right.
have different interpretations, and I'm actually I'm so happy people do that, because
Yeah.
maybe even something I don't fully understand. But like, for me, the way I looked at it was, Jude was trying to merge man with the technology, so religion is outdated. We don't need to die. We don't need to be saved anymore. I am now the God. I am now your savior. You will bow before me. So Lucifer is trying to create his kingdom on earth. So that
Right.
way God can't have anybody. God can't, nobody goes to heaven. Nobody believes in Jesus anymore. All that whole thing. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
that's why, again, that's why he doesn't have redemption, because he's literally the greatest evil of all mankind. That's what spawns from the transhumanist movement, essentially.
Yeah.
So
And I feel like when Jude like initially um came up with this new technology, this revolutionary technology,
yeah.
it was on the surface looking like something that would help humanity,
Oh,
but it
definitely.
was just all
Definitely.
for himself. It was just all for his own greed. He wanted to be, like you said, not only famous, but be the guy, be the god,
Yeah.
own the world. It puts new meaning of like he's got the whole world in his hands, like indeed
That's
he
good. I
does.
love that. That's great. That is so true. Yes. I mean, come on, like, think about it. What better tool to people? You never have to die. There is no end. That's one of the scariest things that we all face in this world is our own
Yeah,
mortality.
like who wants to be like with barely an eyeball remaining and like a
Whatever.
scroggly.
Yeah, I mean, if he can fix all of that, if he can fix anybody with the serum, with technology, people are going to love him. I mean, it's literally the greatest political eh,
And I,
thing of ever. And you know what? It's not so far-fetched because literally the other day, I was just posting about this on Harpazo, the head of Google, the head of technology, he was the head of technology Google, Ray Kurzweil, he's a futurist, and he was just writing about how the nanobot technology, which inspired this album for sure, is coming, and AI, and they're going to inject these things in our veins, and we're going to, and this is happening way before I put this album in 2142. When I first wrote it, I mean, they were just talking about it, but now we got like Elon Musk just had like someone installed a chip in someone's
the
head, and
Neuralink and all that, and
what? Like, but I mean, literally, I wasn't intent. I put this album in the future for a reason. I didn't want anyone going to me, all right, next year the end is coming.
and
Like, I
you
didn't
know,
want to,
in like video games, that's also like
yeah.
the machinery with humanity. Like
I
Deus
wanted,
Ex is all about that too.
I
But
wanted,
then
I wanted it
but then
I
the
wanted
people
it
have
out of the real
adverse
world.
reactions to the technology too.
I wanted it out of the real world. I didn't want it. I wanted it in the future. I wanted the people to think about what's going to happen. I didn't want it to be tomorrow. I didn't want to be commentating on politics of today. But I wanted to warn, essentially, be almost be able, like just like Terminator was a warning, like about what technology can do to humanity. It's the same idea. I'm a huge Terminator fan, like movies, things like that. But like technology is great, but it can definitely be used for evil. And I think with things like Chat GPT and how they can erase things and make us think a certain way, especially if we start getting like Ray Kurzweil was saying that we can get Chat GPT essentially in our head and we can learn every language and we'd have the answer. And that's what iCore is talking about with having be uploaded to the net of their system, the Legion program, you're going to be part of their system. So they'll control the way you think. You may not think they will, but they will. They control the facts. And if all the facts are coming in here, there's not going to be an alternative resource of news or thinking. It's just going to be their way or no way. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that and how that evolves.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And I love like again like the the involvement of everyone taking over like the singing parts. I mean,
oh
like
yes.
you mentioned, DC Cooper and
Oh yeah,
like
he's
there's
awesome.
I mean, I know you're just a massive fan and
Oh yeah,
there's Les Carlson like you said and then Michael Lee Drive and like I was just listening
that's
to
awesome.
Imaginary Music,
Oh my
by
God, I
Marion
love that
Cross, like
album.
classic song.
Out of
And like
Time. That was
and
one of
like
the first songs I
right
ever
when you
heard.
messaged me, like
Were you
with that,
really?
and I saw Michael Lee Drive Baron Cross, I was like,
Yeah,
what?
man, that's awesome. That's great. I mean, Mary Cross is legendary.
It's
And
so cool, like how the album is paced and the musicianship between the songs. It's interesting how you how you organized each song. So like how many iterations did this album go through before you found like a track listing or a type of organization where you felt like, wow, this really sounds good?
oh my gosh. I don't know. There's only two songs I can think of that got a slight rewrite. iCore sounded a little bit different, the same chorus, but I wasn't in love with it. And I think I love the new version. I mean, it's amazing. And I think some there were lyrical changes for sure. over the years. I had a lot. We've been working on this project for over like 10 years. I mean, this is a passion project. When you write lyrics 10 years ago and then you listen to it for 10 years, you can't help but go, wait a minute, let me rewrite that part. And before Les Carlson sings it. So there was some changes towards the end. And Gary actually sang all the what we call them the guide vocals for every single part, including the female vocals.
Oh
So he would
man.
actually do falsetto. It wasn't too bad, actually. I always laugh. Like sometimes I could still hear it, but he would actually sing all the parts. And I would do backup vocals, but he would sing the main parts. And so when we give the album to the singers, they had a guide track to use. They didn't have to follow it exactly. They all have their own style, but we wanted to at least get the way we loved it. We want them to be there with us on the same thought. We didn't want them to change a really heavy, aggressive vocal part to something really soft. Like that wouldn't work. That's not what we wanted. We had so much thought put into the different sections of why they were going to sound the way they were, what the characters were feeling, that the guide vocals were to help them guide the emotions of the character. So that's what a lot of them did. All of them had obviously their own stylistic changes that they did to it. Every singer, sometimes it's funny. I think about it. I'm like, it's not quite like Arion. And on Arion album, typically you have like almost every other line sung by a different singer. I
Right.
mean, all the songs. Sometimes it's just one, but a lot of times you get like so much flavor. On this album, I didn't want to overwhelm the listener. Like, so I usually only have like maybe one or two guests per song. I wanted to just kind of keep it simple. So when their guest part came up, you were excited for it. Like Michael Drive's section on the Crucible still gives me chills to this day.
Right.
Just so cool. And so he's so awesome. They just brought it out.
You know that it's him.
It's him. You can hear it. And it almost sounds like, and they just came out with an album called Breaking the Silence, which is really good, but it's not a metal album. It's not a metal album. It's more of like a rock album. It's different. It's a different side of Michael Drive, which Michael Drive can sing anything. This album is a lot more classic, kind of like it's just more of a metal album. So you're hearing Metal Mike. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna hear him in his most epic fashion. And that's the version I like of Michael. I love all versions of Michael, but this is my favorite version, the Baron Cross version of Michael. And I understand they don't want to do all the same kind of music nowadays, and I totally support that. But on my album, that's how I wanted that kind of Michael on my CD, and I got it. I got it real
Hmm.
good.
Now, like as far as the production aspect of it, I
Yeah.
know like primarily that's Gary, but did you kind of work like side by side
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
to how you wanted the album to
Oh yeah.
sound?
Oh, absolutely. Basically, every single song I had an idea for. This is what we're gonna go off here. This is a template of a song. I would write the lyrics out and go, I want the song to be in this style. I'll give you a perfect example, The Book of Life, which is probably for a lot of people, once you get towards the end, it's probably like it'll be people's favorites, I think, later on, after they get tired for the first 10 heavy metal tracks. I think later on people will come around to that track a little bit more. But that was based off I was listening to Lorena McKennitt, who's a Celtic singer,
Yeah,
and there's a
yeah, yeah, yeah. She had the
you've heard of
Munster
her.
dance, right?
Yes, you got it. So there's a song she does called "The Highwayman," and it's based off a poem by can't remember the poet's name today. Um, and that song is basically a 10-minute long journey of, and I just like, wow, I never heard anything like that before. And I really was like, I kind of want to do something similar to that. And that was like the beginning song structure that I had was making it a little bit more poetic, writing in more of a poetic way than just kind of like the singers talking back and forth or whatever. So that was the idea for that was the concept behind that one, the guitars, the sounds, the acoustics. So again, every time we had a song, I had an idea. I had 4 or 5 song ideas that sounded like the way I wanted it to sound. And obviously there's a setting involved too of where they are. Like in Golden Crown is a perfect example. They're at a ballroom, right? Like, there's how many ballroom heavy metal songs have you heard? I can think of one, Human Equation Love. That's it. There's
Mm.
no other ones. It's a dance floor song. It's very similar. That was like the only like song I can think of that kind of had that vibe at the time. And we obviously are huge Arion fans. So that was like a good helpful little song when I was writing it. But I didn't want to be obviously Arion. I just want to write my own thing. But I wanted you to feel like, especially in the beginning with the acoustic guitar, you're at the ballroom. The dance is about to go on, and you just get done getting hit with I Am God and I-Core and Legion Program, which is like all like super heavy metal. And then wait a second, we're at a ballroom now. I mean, I don't know what people think of that song. It's like my favorite song on the album, but I'm sure people are like, "What happened?" Like, it's like
Yeah,
more of
yeah.
a clean sticks-ish kind of song. You know, it totally changes on you. So
So you chose I Am God to be like the carrier single. And what do you
yeah.
think about the response to that song, especially as it was receiving airtime, it was getting played?
Yeah, I think it was a good song to start with for sure. I think the best part about it is people are going to hear that song and go, some people are going to go, this is a wow, it's about God. Not really. It's about Jude Solomon saying he's God. And I think that was lost on some listeners. So people like from the Christian community, when they start looking deeper into the lyrics, like, wait a minute, there's no Christian lyrics in this. What are you talking about? And then you have the people on like the heavy metal, it's like, oh, this is a really cool song. So I kind of had the best of both worlds with that song to introduce the concept of it without, there's definitely some lyrics in there that if you really kind of pay attention, like, well, rebuilding Rome into Babylon, what are they talking about? And that was supposed to get people thinking, what is, get them interested in the single. So I think the response, I mean, gosh, we've had over 100,000 listens on YouTube. It's definitely our most listened to song. It's the least progressive of the songs. I
It's like it's very like
know,
radio ready, but very
Radio
friendly.
Ready.
It's all the right notes.
That
Like,
was kind of like we kind of went back and that was a little bit of Gary's idea to kind of like let's just make a just bang on song.
yeah,
Like just
pumping, just like
it's like
everything.
an adrenaline boost of Harpazo. Like they'll get the rest of the album. They'll hear all the guitar solos. They'll hear all that stuff. We have obviously 8 minute long, 10 minute long songs on the CD. So I think this one we really just wanted to capture the vibe of it. And even then, we almost couldn't help ourselves because there are times I'm like, it would have been nice to have like a really cool guitar solo at this part. And I'm like, you know what, people
Yeah.
nowadays in this world, you got to get their attention right from the beginning, and I think the song does that. And I wouldn't change it. I love it the way it is now, but I think at the time we thought about doing more of like a traditional guitar solo, bridge back in the chorus again, and we decided to, the song has that awesome bridge and that chorus, and almost has like three choruses if you think about it. The bridge, and then you have like the Rome is right. That's like the bridge part,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then and that whole section, him talking about what he is, and then it goes to I am God. It leads up to it, so you almost have like this three chorus kind of
It's
punches.
like it's supposed to be like a single, but it has all these like parts to it where you're like, wait, there's something more to it, you know?
So I think the response has been great. People love it. And it's our most played song right now. But there's another song that I've been noticing creeping up that's been a new, like two actually. People obviously are loving the Crucible, but Ultimatum is getting a decent amount of play. Every time I check, it's right behind I Am God. And I don't even have a music video for that one yet. So I think that could possibly be our next single. We're looking at that, but that song is getting a lot of listens. People seem to really be enjoying that one.
And that's really cool. And just overall, like, how do you feel about this album, The Crucible? And like we were discussing, would you see this like having another part to it?
That's a good question. Um, I'm very proud of the album. I know Gary is too. Gosh, we still listen to it every once in a while. He listens to it, I listen to it. We'll text each other, man, I love that one part of that one song. And it's been all I've known for so many years, and I've lived through it. Sometimes I'm like, I don't want to hear it right now, just because I've heard it 9 billion times. You guys have only heard it a couple hundred times, so you imagine me. I made it and I listened to it,
Yeah,
and I still,
especially like
wow,
during the mixing process, right?
oh
You
my gosh,
listen to it
yeah.
like at least 100 times.
And I make the music. I made the iCore music video. I made the clips, so it's just like I get a chance to live. I know every inch of that I know every part of it, and I still love it. And I think that means something when a musician can make something and they can come back even over 10 years of us making it, we still love it. We still listen to it. I hope my hope is 10, 15, 20 years from now, like Tyranny and some of the Shadow Gallery albums, that it still has an audience and people will still listen to it. That's my hope is that it becomes, an album that people go back, oh man, I remember that concept album. What a great album that I want to write my own concept album now or whatever. I hope it inspires other people and gets them thinking about how to do stuff like this. And so in terms of part two, I mean, gosh, right
Will there
now,
be a successor to Jude Lawson? Will he
I don't know,
finally
man.
get his comeuppance?
I mean, there definitely could. There are two ways that could go. I can either expand upon it and make it a two CD thing with new songs and maybe another part to the ending, right? There's definitely I could do that. I could there could be a part two. There's a couple little things that could happen. And I think one of the things we were struggled with is this album when I came to Gary had 23 tracks, like 23 songs I wanted to write. And we got it down to 12. And that's actually, it came up a little bit towards the end because we moved the interludes around, but it was originally 10 or not, or 11, or whatever. Um, so I think there is more story to tell. There could be a part two. But it really matters if fans buy the album and listen to it. I'm not gonna lie to you, Jake. Making a CD is incredibly expensive. Um, so my hope is, this will catch on, and a lot of people want to hear a part two, and maybe a label would be interested. And we have Rock Shots like record label, and they love it. But maybe someone could actually help finance a little bit of it, so we can get the second one up and running. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But right now we're just trying to break in any promoting and talking to anyone and just I was thinking the other day, like a lot of times when I hear this album, I think of Trans-Siberian Orchestra,
Right,
like
yeah, yeah.
Sabotage, one of the greatest progressive rock
The
bands
Hall of the Mountain
ever.
King, right?
Oh my gosh, yes, but like
Up
all
to
the
the
CDs.
Mountain King.
Yes, I love that song. But even their other stuff, like there's like the Dead Winter Dead, and I'm thinking to myself, man, like this album, and I heard other people tell me like this is a musical. This is more than just a heavy metal album, and maybe there's something there. I'm gonna be talking to
Especially
some,
like in live performance, if you guys
yeah.
like take this live.
And at Immortal Fest, where a lot of like Les Carlson and Michael Drive and Ray Park, they all go to Immortal Fest. This is that's actually happening today, and then it happens again at the end of August. And all they get their bands together and they put a live performances on and do a thing. I'm thinking to myself, well, if we could do it there, I mean, all the musicians already go there every year, so that's a possibility. But really, just matter, finance. I hate when money is something that stops things from happening because I know so many people love the album. And I just need, if you love it and if you're listening to this, please help me get the word out about it. This is a once in a lifetime kind of project. These don't come along every day because most people, it just isn't viably, in terms of it's not really meant to make money. It's really meant to be a passion project. It was meant to
Yeah.
be my gift to, to Christian music metal listeners. Like I thought it was a cool concept. I wanted to share it with people. I knew I wasn't going to make $1 billion off of this or a million or maybe even my money back. It was really just about the passion of doing what God gave me, which is to do this. He gave me the gifts to write, and I did it. And that's what I hope is people use this in their own life, and it helps them when they're dealing with a terrible day. They can escape it, and they can listen to the album. And so I'm hoping people will want a part two because I'd be more than happy to write it. But right now, and who knows? Me and Gary might get together, might write one or two songs to try to get somebody interested. I'm not sure. We talked about that a little bit, but we'll see.
Hmm. And then considering your career thus far, all you've worked up to this point, what have you learned about yourself, not only as a musician, but as a person?
Jake, what a great question. That's literally one of the best questions I've gotten so far. So what have I learned about myself? Um,
in this process?
I will tell you, I have oh man, when I first started this off, I was actually when I first started getting a guitar playing, I was more of an atheist than anything else.
Mhm.
So I was writing for a news company, ended up finding my faith through the CD. The CDs actually, in a lot of ways, helped me keep my own life on track with my wife and my kids. I think at one point it seemed so insurmountable that I would actually be able to pay for the studio time, for the musicians, for the all these pieces because no record label was interested unless the product was basically in its final stages. That's generally how it works when you're trying to pitch something. You need to have a finished product. So for me, I had to learn how to get out of debt. And one of the things that I got really into was when I moved down here I'm from New Jersey and I moved to Augusta, Georgia. My wife and I came across Dave Ramsey. He's a radio host. He does like getting out of debt. And that's what we did. We lived on rice and beans. We paid off every credit card we had. I got a way better job. We ended up getting married and we cash flowed that. So we just started to make the most of what we had because for so long when the project stalled and because I ran out of money and I wasn't disciplined enough in my own personal life to come up with it. And I had to tell Gary, I just can't do it. I just can't pay for this time. And because he has partners that own the studio, I can't just pay a couple $1,000s here and there. I didn't have it. So I had to learn to be disciplined. And I think a lot of ways that changed my career, that changed my relationship with my wife. I got out of doing a really bad job. Jake, if you could believe this, I used to be a repo man. I used to repo cars for a living in New Jersey, like a tow truck driver. Okay. I used to take people's cars for a living. Not exactly the nicest job in the world. And don't really want you to be at their house taking their car from them. It's a sad thing that happens. And I was in part of like, and I was just going through like this spiraling. And, God kind of found me again, I guess you could say, and got me off of that track, got me disciplined. And now, like, so many things are just coming together, the right people. And I just see God's blessings on everything. And I don't know if I am, but I feel anointed in a way. And sometimes when I say these things is because God's given me everything. Every time I reach out to somebody, every time, like I reached out to you, right? And I was reading your reviews, and I'm like, I think he might dig it, and you did. Like all these little things, you wrote a great review, and I'm so proud of it. And having this interview with you, and every part of my life it's all been leaning to this, and I started to realize, what, the album was so important to me, but now more important to me, anything else is being a father and a husband. I just had a 6-month-old daughter. I have a 4-year-old son. And for so long, the album was like, for me, that was giving my greatest contribution to the world, I thought. And I started to realize as I get older, got out of debt, having a family, and stop putting things off in my life and start embracing things and accepting my wife as my partner and asking her to marry me when I knew I wanted to, but I was putting it off because I didn't want to pay for a wedding because I wanted to pay for the album. I realized I would be much better as a partnership with my wife to afford it. So again, getting out of debt, finding God, having children. I mean, it's changed my whole life. And again, I wouldn't take it back for anything. I mean, this album saved me, and I couldn't be more proud of it.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a total absence of faith in the beginning and then having this total like revelation throughout your body and soul. It's a resurgence of
Yeah,
faith.
absolutely, absolutely. It definitely felt like there was a reason why I had to do this, and you know, so here I am. Here I am talking to you, making new friends, and going to my corporate job during the day, but at night I'm a rock star. My sister will say I'm not a rock star, but she was like, "Here, you're doing like all these rock interviews, and you're meeting all these people, and I'm getting the chance to pray for people that and be parts of people's life that I never would have been a part of, and it's so incredible." And like I had someone message me even the other night and was just telling me that they were dealing with massive depression and things like that. And I'm just a musician. I'm just a guy, and they talk to me and I can just be positive force in their life. that God is using me every step of the way. And I didn't know this was going to happen, Jake. I wrote a CD. There was no social media when I started this whole project. There was no talking to people. And now I'm like introduced to this whole world. And it's just, I feel like in some ways it's just getting started, but I don't know. So we'll guess we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Lastly, anything you'd like to say to your fans?
Uh, Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for obviously listening to the album and promoting it. So many of you will be sharing the CD and days where it seems like a new album is coming out every week. I mean, that's good. I mean, it's really hard to get the word out there, and I wouldn't be able to do it without the fans. I mean, I can post a million times in every rock group and people can just ignore it. But when you guys talk about it, it means something to other people. And we had just recently did an interview with this guy named Sin from Japan for this rock magazine, and I mean it's getting around the world because of you guys. And the more it does, the more good it could bring to the world. The more people can enjoy it. They can hear the message of redemption. They can hear the message of anyone can change from their life. I mean, this album again, this is kind of like my change, but for you, it could be your own change, and it can be more than just an album. It can definitely be just an album if that's what you want it to be. But for you, some of you who are like me, who get into the characters, it could be more than that. And I hope it's a positive blessing in your life. And I just thank you for sharing and listening and buying the album and just keep doing that. If you want to, again, if you want to hear more, buy the album, spread the word, keep doing what you're doing. And Jake, and thank you so much for having me for this interview and asking all these great questions. I've had a real great time.